Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, the follow-up to the highly acclaimed Assassin's Creed 2 and the second part in what would become the Ezio trilogy. It is one of only two of the mainline games of the series we play again as the same historical protagonist, the other being the next entry, Assassin's Creed Revelations. It was released on Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 in November 2010 and on PC in March 2011. An upscaled version of the game was released on the Xbox One and PlayStation 4 in November 2016 as part of the Ezio collection, along with its predecessor Assassin's Creed 2 and the already mentioned follow-up. As part of the development of the Assassin's Creed franchise as a whole, following on from AC2, Ubisoft introduced a mandate that there should be year releases. Development had already begun in Assassin's Creed 3 by a separate team, but wouldn't be ready until 2012. So what would they do? Design continue on from the popularity of Ezio, and already having the assets from AC2 where they could make another Italian-based game, AC Brotherhood was born. As much praise as Brotherhood did pick up from critics and fans of the series, there have been people that have tried to downplay it by just referring to it as Assassin's Creed 2.5. As much as it is true that the feel and setting of Brotherhood does feel very similar to AC2, it did build nicely on what AC2 did introduce and has many improvements. It was also the first game in the series to introduce a multiplayer mode, but I will discuss both gameplay and multiplayer in a later section. Like in my previous two videos, I have opted to play the Xbox 360 version of the game on my Xbox One S to be able to appreciate the original release of the game. Safe to say it's a lot more stable than AC2 with my save not running away, if you know, you know. Anyway, onto the game. As usual, just a warning, this section is going to contain spoilers, so if you haven't played the game yet and want to, feel free to skip to the next section of the video, timestamps below. The story picks up exactly where AC2 ended, with Ezio in the vault under the Vatican after his encounter with the hologram of the god Minerva. As Minerva has now vanished, Ezio decides it's time to leave. Outside the vault, it is revealed that the Templar leader, Rodrigo Borgia, has survived and escaped. The papal staff, which was previously revealed to be a piece of Eden, a powerful artefact from Minerva's rays, descends into the ground with Ezio unable to stop it, but at least he still has another artefact, the apple. Mario, Ezio's uncle, suddenly appears as he came to assist Ezio. They both escape Rome and return to the Auditore villa in Monteriggioni. Back at the villa, Ezio reveals to his fellow assassins that Rodrigo Borgia lived, much to the chagrin of Niccolò Machiavelli, who storms off in anger. Ezio retires for the evening and shares some special relations with Caterina Sforza, the Countess of Forli. The next morning, they are rudely disturbed by the papal army laying siege to Monteriggioni. Ezio and the mercenaries of the small town try and hold off the attacking army by using the cannons mounted in the surrounding walls, but it is of no use. In the attack, Ezio is shot and Mario is killed by a mysterious man who also steals the Apple of Eden. Ezio is saved by some friendly mercenaries and is able to escape Monteriggioni with his mother Maria and sister Claudia through tunnels underneath the villa. Ezio realises he needs to travel back to Rome and take out the Borgias once and for all. On the way, he passes out from his injuries he sustained and falls off his horse. Focus switches to the modern day, where Desmond, Lucy, Sean and Rebecca are in transit after having fled their last safe house after being found by the Templars, also known as the company Afterglen Industries. They end up in Monteriggioni, which is still partially destroyed from the attack just went through Ezio. With the help of visions Desmond is seeing due to the time he spent in the Animus, and skills he's picked up thanks to the bleeding effect, they're able to access the assassin chamber in the villa and set up the equipment here to allow Desmond to continue exploring Ezio's memories. When back with Ezio, he wakes up in the house being nursed to health by a kind woman who informs Ezio that he was brought there by an unknown man who also left some new assassin's armour and robes. How nice and convenient. Ezio meets up with Machiavelli, who shows him the oppression that the Borgias have brought upon Rome and its people. He also reveals to Ezio that the man who attacked Monteriggioni was Cesare Borgia, Rodrigo's son and the leader of the papal army. Ezio sets up a base in Tabir Island where he starts planning on how to take the Borgias down to free Rome from their grasp and get rid of them once and for all. He realises that he's unable to do this alone, so seeks out the assistance from the local thieves and mercenaries, who are once again led by La Volpe and Bartolomeo da Alviano, and from the local courtesans, who are now led by his sister Claudia after their previous leader was killed. Through intelligence gathered by Claudia, Ezio discovers the location of Caterina Sforza after she was captured during the attack in Monteriggioni. Ezio infiltrates the Castel Sant'Angelo, where he witnesses Caterina being hit by Lucrezia Borgia, Rodrigo's daughter and Cesare's sister/lover. Gross. Ezio is able to free Caterina and they both escape back to the base on Tabir Island before she decides to head back to Florence as she felt she was no use without Forli and wanted to be with her children. Back at the base, Ezio conveys to Machiavelli he wishes to rebuild the Assassin Brotherhood by recruiting members of the public who are being oppressed by the Borgias and take back Rome. Ezio's next plan of action was to cut off the money Cesare was receiving to fund his army. This person was revealed to be Juan Borgia, who was simply referred to as the banker. To get to the banker, Ezio disguised himself as one of the guards tasked with taking money to him. Using the disguise, Ezio was able to infiltrate a party being held to celebrate Cesare and assassinate Juan. With the banker out the way, Ezio went to assist Bartolomeo with his ongoing battle with the French army, led by Octavian de Velus, who was a Templar also working together with Cesare. During a battle, Ezio and Bartolomeo hold back the French troops, but they're able to kidnap Bartolomeo's wife, Penthesilea. By using Bartolomeo's mercenaries disguised as French soldiers and Bartolomeo himself as bait, Ezio is able to free Penthesilea and assassinate Octavian. The next task for Ezio was to find a way into Castel Sant'Angelo again to try and take out Cesare and Rodrigo. The Volpe reveals to Ezio that Lucrezia Lover, an actor by the name of Pietro Rossi, had the key to a side entrance to the Castel. While searching for Pietro, Ezio discovers an assassin called Micheletto Corella, who has been tasked with taking out Pietro during one of his plays due to Cesare discovering his relation with Lucrezia. Ezio was able to take out all the guards who were put in place to facilitate the kill, and was about to take out Micheletto before he realised that Pietro had already been poisoned as a backup plan. Ezio rushes Pietro to a doctor where he is given the key as a token of gratitude. After receiving the key, Ezio notices a member of the Thieves Guild called Paganino who was in Monteriggioni in the night attack and thought dead. Ezio chases Paganino where he discovers that he is a double agent working for the Borgia and helped facilitate the attack. While trying to get more information from him, Paganino uses Ezio's hidden blade to kill himself before divulging any further information. Ezio rushes back to the base to stop the Volpe from killing Machiavelli, who he thought was a traitor. After this has been cleared up, Ezio inducts Claudia into the Assassin's Brotherhood, and he himself is promoted to the Master of the Assassins. Now with the way in, Ezio infiltrates the Castel Sant'Angelo where he witnesses Rodrigo try to poison Cesare due to how power hungry he has become, but is unsuccessful and is himself killed by Cesare in retaliation. Cesare disappears and Ezio finds out from Lucrezia that this is to collect the apple that Rodrigo had hidden. Ezio manages to get to the apple first and uses it to take out any major supporters of Cesare. Ezio manages to catch up with Cesare at the gates of Rome just as he is arrested by order of the new Pope, Julius II. While being dragged away, Cesare issues a warning that chains won't be able to hold him. Ezio is concerned with the warning, so uses the apple to see if what Cesare says is true. After validation being obtained by the apple, Ezio rushes to Vienna and Spain to confront the now escaped Cesare. After a fight between the two, which Ezio wins, Cesare states that no man can kill him, so Ezio decides to leave it up to fate and throws him off the top of the castle wall they've been fighting on. Sometime later, Ezio visits a vault similar to the one under the Vatican, where he locks away the apple. With the location of the apple now revealed, Desmond has pulled out the Animus and he and the group decide to go after it, which leads him to the Colosseum in Rome. Desmond, now with all the abilities of Ezio, traverses a dangerous path under the Colosseum, where he witnesses another god called Juno. No, not the pregnant girl from that movie. The path eventually leads Desmond to the Santa Maria Aracoli, where he discovered that the vault they are searching for is underneath along with the apple. Desmond touches the apple, at which point a load of symbols are projected from it. He picks up the apple and everyone freezes, with Desmond now unable to move. It turns out that Juno had taken control of Desmond via the apple and forced him to move towards and stab Lucy, at which point they both fall to the floor and the credits roll. AC Brotherhood, while very similar to AC2 in terms of setting and feel, improved in gameplay elements which made it a much smoother experience. The movement and climbing feel more or less the same, though I did find it frustrating climbing some of the towers where they've almost made it a puzzle in trying to find the correct path of handholds to use to get to the top. Also, the ability to jump while climbing a wall that is learned in AC2 is not available until purchasing an item later in the game, that just so happens to allow you to do this, which is a bit annoying. One new mechanic that does make getting to the rooftops a lot quicker are lists that can be found scattered throughout Rome. When Ezio goes up, a bag is dropped which can also be used to take out chasing guards that get too close. Horses play a bigger part in Brotherhood. While the movement does feel similar to the last two games, though I would say turning is a bit sharper, they have a lot more uses. In Brotherhood, horses are not just confined to outer city traversal, but can also be used around the streets of Rome, which is helpful with the size of the single in-game map. Combat can also be utilised while on the horse, such as using ranged weapons, taking swipes at nearby enemies with your primary weapon, and assassinating from the horse, which also includes enemies on the horse, which Ezio will then take control of. As with the previous game, earning money is important for buying new weapons in order to increase Ezio's health/sync bar. By purchasing and upgrading buildings confined to Monteriggioni and AC2, Ezio is now able to purchase multiple types of shops across Rome, including doctors, blacksmiths, tailors, bags, art stores, and now also stables. Certain landmarks can also be purchased, such as the Colosseum, which will also contribute to the income generated. Not all buildings can be purchased straight away though, since Rome is under Borgia oppression, some areas are under lockdown, and the only way to lift it is to destroy the nearby Borgia towers. To do so, Ezio must take out a captain who oversees the tower, then he can climb to the top of the tower and set it alight. One of the main new gameplay elements, which feeds into the Brotherhood title of the game, is the ability to recruit citizens across Rome into the assassins. To do this, Ezio will encounter people being hassled by Borgia guards. Once these guards are taken care of, Ezio will invite them into the Brotherhood. These recruits can then be called upon to take out targeted enemies and assist in battles. The ability to call for help is denoted under the health bar by red segments which need to refill after each use. These segments increase after a certain number of people are recruited, allowing for more to be called at one time, or more use in a shorter space of time. These recruits can be levelled up to increase their health and the weapons they are able to use. Once they reach the maximum level, Ezio will then promote them to the rank of assassin. To increase our recruits' level, they can be sent on missions of varying difficulties throughout Europe. It is also unfortunately possible for the recruits to die while on a mission or offering assistance, which will mean that someone new will need to be recruited to fill their place and start from scratch. Also in Brotherhood, Desmond is not completely confined to the Animus this time. There is an option in the menu that allows Desmond to leave the Animus whenever he wishes, except after the main story has been completed, for obvious reasons. While outside the Animus, Desmond can again speak with his team members, as well as check emails on a nearby laptop. You can also explore Monteriggioni at night while there is no one around, though you will need to return to the hideout immediately at sunrise. There is not much to do in Monteriggioni except to collect a handful of artefacts that are related to Ezio, though it is pretty cool to wander the area that you probably spent a lot of time in during AC2 with a slightly modern twist. There was also a multiplayer mode introduced in Brotherhood, and I had hoped to have this as a section on its own, but unfortunately servers looked to have been shut down in January this year, which is a shame as I remember having a lot of fun with its unique gameplay. When I initially went to the mode, I was provided with some false hope as a cutscene played setting up the backstory where you're a trainee Templar working for Abstergo, and was using the Animus for training, but then came to nothing except an error that the server was now unreachable. All the same weapon types are available from the previous game, with some additions such as Poison Dart, which has the same effect as the Poison Dagger, which causes an enemy to flail around for a short period of time before succumbing to the poison, but now it can be administered from a distance, and a crossbow, which provides a quieter yet powerful ranged attack, which is useful for being more stealthy. Combat itself is still very similar to the previous games, but has been improved upon to make it more seamless. Ranged weapons can now be used while in combat, and a new chain attack feature has been introduced, which allows Ezio to jump between enemies where he can take them out in a single strike as long as the streak continues. I've seen some people say that this makes combat too easy, which I can partially agree with, but it is fun and makes Ezio seem like a genuine badass. Brotherhood introduces extra objectives which can be carried out during a mission. These range from not losing more than a certain number of health squares or killing a certain number of enemies in a particular way. Completing the mission and these objectives contribute to 100% completion of the mission. Failing the extra objectives means that the mission is only 50% complete. This contributes to the overall sync meter for Ezio, which in turn unlocks other in-game missions. With synchronization aspect introduced, missions can now also be replayed to redo anything which may have previously been failed. The assassin tombs from AC2 have been replaced in Brotherhood by the layers of Romulus. These are more or less the same as the tombs, where Ezio needs to navigate a fairly linear path with some story elements attached until he reaches an area that contains a key. Once 6 keys have been collected, they can be used to unlock a special armour, which I'm not sure I'm the biggest fan of. I think it's for element to it and I'm quite partial to the simple original rules. As have been reintroduced to 3 factions, the Thieves, Courtesans and Mercenaries, side missions are unlocked for each of them, the latter which double up as the assassination contracts which were introduced in AC2. These missions have an underlying story, but tend to be fairly basic tasks, such as Thieves challenging Ezio to race through checkpoints to prove himself, or beat up a person who's hitting a member of the Courtesans. Ezio's old friend Leonardo da Vinci returns and brings along with him a series of side quests. It turns out that he was commissioned / ordered by Cesare to develop and build some machines he can use in his war efforts. These range from a tank-like machine that fires explosives, to a flying machine returning, which now includes some firepower of its own and can rain down terror from above. Leonardo asks Ezio to destroy these machines before Cesare can use them for his own twisted goals, and in return he'll recreate some of his inventions from the previous game, such as the dual hidden blade and the aforementioned climbing glove. Once all the machines are destroyed, Leonardo will grace Ezio with his newest invention, the parachute. This allows Ezio to jump from a high place and use the parachute to gracefully come back down to earth, though the moving left and right controls are not the greatest from what I found in the limited number of attempts I tried. Once the player reaches certain sync percentages, side missions unlock centred around Ezio's girlfriend from the beginning of AC2, Christina. These missions start from the point where Ezio first claps eyes on his future love. The rest of the missions take place during previously unseen parts of the AC2 story and conclude with their unhappy ending. There's not much to these missions and they're over pretty quick, but does provide some extra story and shows a slightly softer side to Ezio you don't really see at any other point since he became a hardened assassin. Templar agents can also be found around Rome. These serve as introducing the characters you can choose between in multiplayer. Glyphs also return from AC2 and again require the player to complete a number of puzzles to unlock more cryptic messages from the infamous Subject 16. Once all completed, it's not a video that unlocks this time, but a short sequence where we play as Desmond and have to traverse a linear path until he's faced with the embodiment of Subject 16, who has more cryptic messages that serve as a spoiler of things to come. Collectibles also return in the form of feathers and Borgia flags. There doesn't appear to be any rewards for collecting the feathers, but after collecting all flags, Ezio is awarded with the Borgia cape, which keeps notoriety at 0 while worn. There's a single piece of DLC for Brotherhood, at least from an Xbox perspective, but I'll elaborate on that in a minute. The piece of DLC is called the Da Vinci Disappearance and is set before the final sequence of the game. It revolves around Ezio and Leonardo's apprentice Salih discovering that Da Vinci had been kidnapped by a group called the Cult of Hermes who want him to show the entrance to the secret temple he discovered. It appears that Leonardo has left a clue behind at the entrance to the temple with hidden paintings that have since come into possession of the Borgias. Ezio is able to procure the paintings and use the map segments hidden within to discover the temple entrance. Once there, Ezio finds Leonardo being beaten by the cult leader but is able to take him and his cult members out and they both enter the temple. Within, they find some precursor tech which projects numbers and letters which appear to potentially be coordinates. Ezio, again realising that the information shown is not for him to understand, so leads Leonardo back out of the temple. As alluded to, there was technically another free piece of single player DLC for Brotherhood called Copernicus Conspiracy, but it was only originally released for the PS3 when such exclusivity deals were a thing. Obviously due to this, I was unable to play it on this occasion, but from what I have read and remember from playing that version back in the day, and the Ezio collection which it has been included in, it involves the famous astronomer Nicolaus Copernicus, who the Vatican are trying to stop teaching the public about astronomy. The missions involved in DLC are just the usual kinds of missions involved in the base game, so nothing groundbreaking from the standpoint, but it does provide some more story which is always good. The other pieces of DLC released for Brotherhood are multiplayer centric, which has new characters, new maps and new game modes. Again, as much as I have the DLC for this, I am unable to play it due to servers now being offline. An indictment of the continuous issue raised with games where someone pays real money for content which just becomes useless once it's been decided that it's no longer going to be made playable. This is a topic that can and has been discussed in full in many videos on their own right. So, does Assassin's Creed Brotherhood hold up in 2024? Definitely. As much as it has very much the same feel as AC2 and the story wasn't quite as long, I feel they did enough to improve on gameplay elements that made it feel fresh enough. I think I would even go as far and say that Brotherhood may rank slightly above AC2 for me in my list of favourite games, but I do wonder if that is due to the issues I experienced with the previous game. The combat is definitely improved upon again, even if it could be described as simplified with the chain kills, but I feel this added some fluidity where you didn't have to just need to wait around for the next attacker to counter kill. As already stated, it also did make Ezio feel like a ruthless killer and warranted the assassin title. I also liked the addition of adding in recruits who can be used to help take out guards, which became especially useful in missions where you can't be detected, though I did have encounters where they got involved in a bigger fight and unfortunately didn't make it. Speaking of the recruits, to unlock more slots, Borgia towers had to be destroyed, and some of them were slightly frustrating where you came to taking out commanders who flee if you're detected before getting to them. If they make it to an inside location, you will have to wait until the change of the guard at sunrise or sunset for them to appear again, which sometimes felt like an age. Brotherhood looks graphically superior to the previous games, which I suppose you should expect, but the character faces do look a lot better than AC2 for a game that has been dubbed 2.5 and still holds up almost 14 years later. I also don't remember encountering any bugs, which was nice after the nightmare I had with AC2, until the last mission in Da Vinci DLC where Ezio seemed to be missing his torso during gameplay, but that is only a minor thing and was fine in cutscenes. So yes, I would highly recommend playing Brotherhood in 2024, but for ease and to ensure a full and updated experience, I would probably suggest playing it as part of the Ezio collection, which is part of one of the greatest trilogies in my opinion. Thank you for watching this video, and I want to send a special thank you to anyone who has watched or interacted with any of my content up until this point. I'm still learning and finding my way, but glad people seem to be enjoying it. It would be greatly appreciated if you can give the video a like and subscribe to the channel, as well as leave any comments below on any improvements I can make, any things you may want to see in the channel, or even any memories you have of AC Brotherhood. See you next time.